Hello everybody and welcome back to another After Effects video. So in this video I'm going to be teaching you how to import a video and how to have it then fade off into a background. So to start off, let's make a new composition and we're going to call this one background fade. We want to make sure that it's set to HDTV 1080 and that the width is 1920 by 1080. The frames per second will be 29.97, and we want our resolution to be full. In this animation, I'm going to set to 15 seconds. Press OK. So what we're going to start off with is we're going to start importing our files. So let's go and import our background first, and we're going to have it as footage, and we're going to hit import. So we're going to bring this glowing energy background down into the timeline. And this will insert the video into our workspace. Now notice how big this video is in comparison to our frame. So if we look here in our settings, in our project window, we see that our composition was set to 1920 by 1080, but this video was taken at 4K. So this video is fitting bigger than our 1920 by 1080 workspace. So in order to fix it, all we have to do is shrink it down to fit our space. And to do this, click on any of the handles and hold Shift and have it so that it roughly fits the frame. It doesn't have to be perfect. So now what we want to do is we want to go and find our landscape that we want to import. So what's important is we want to import it as a composition because we want to retain all those different layers. So when you go back to the import settings, we want to import it as composition retain layer styles. So that way we can keep all those layers separate and press import. So now you notice over in the projects window here that we have both the landscape composition and the layers that make up that landscape. So we're going to just click and drag down this landscape into our timeline. So we notice that we don't see it. That's because our background for our glowing sun is above it. So we're just going to hide this layer for right now. So now we can see our background landscape that we put in. But notice now it's too small. So what we want to do is similar to what we did before, is we want to scale up this picture to fit our frame. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to stretch it. Stretching our image is not great. So it's better to scale it up even bigger than the frame than to have it stretched to fit the frame. So now we can enable this again and tick that back on. So what we want to do right now is we want to animate this video and we want it to fade into our landscape. So how we do this is this little arrow here in our timeline down by our layer stack, click on that and it'll open up this transform and click on another arrow. Now we see all these different things that we can animate about this layer. So if we wanted this to fade out into our landscape, what we're going to want to play around with is our opacity, which is now set to 100%. In order to start animating this, we want to tick off this little stopwatch. So now this makes its own frame, this keyframe here, which is these little blue diamonds. So now we can adjust this opacity and it will set it to that keyframe. So in order to make this fade, we have to set two keyframes. We have to have one keyframe that's the full video at 100%, and then we want to scrub over a little bit. Like how long do we want this fade to be? How about half a second? So now what we do is we go back to this opacity and lower it to say 0 now, so that we can now see just the landscape. And now this automatically creates another blue diamond. So when we go back to 0 and play this, the video now fades out into the landscape. So instead of having the video fade out as soon as the animation begins, let's move these keyframes up a little bit. So let's say we move this to 1 or 2 seconds. So that way the video plays for 2 seconds and then it will fade out. In order to snap it, hold the Shift key and it will snap it to your scrubber. So I'm going to set my scrubber to 2 seconds roughly. And to make sure that it's exactly 2 seconds, you can always look over at this number count over here. Then I'm going to select and hold Shift to snap it into place. So now the video will play for 2 seconds. And then it will fade out. And there you go. Now you know how to fade out a background.